Welcome, Wrenching Rick's Garage. So a few issues with Kool-Aid that I'm trying to sort out. A, the carburetor's got to come off because the choke's just not working right, the fast idle, and I never played with these cars before, so I'm going to split it apart and so you can figure that out. When we fired this engine, absolutely no oil, none. And no oil, smoke, no anything. I hooked the PCV system up, smoke to beat the band. So first thing I'm going to do is pull the PCV valve out and see if it's actually working or if it's getting stuck with oil. So let's get started. And first thing we're going to do is pull that valve out and see what it looks like. See the oil? So that apparently, because that's dripping out of it. Dripping right out of it. Because I couldn't understand why at mid RPM it would smoke. Wide open it really didn't. You let off the throttle really, really fast and it would just bellow smoke. Because that's when there was max vacuum and it was pulling the oil up through. So that problem should be solved, but now how am I going to put one on it? This is a brand new valve. Unless it's bad, I don't know. So now we're going to pull that carb off and throw that puppy on the bench so we can dig into that and see what's going on with that choke. And I want to check the accelerator pump inside and a few things I want to do to it. So, and again, keep moving forward. My hypothesis was right. Look at the oil in that intake. My God. And you can see on top of the spacer it was wet. So what it was doing, see it in there? It was pulling air in, or oil in, through the PCB. Obviously that's faulty. We're going to perform some surgery on this. And like I said, I've never taken one of these apart. So, I'm not 100% sure where the screws even are to hold it together. There's one, and there's one. I don't see any in there. Are they on the bottom? Just the base plate screws. Huh. We don't want to take the base plate off. Is there only 2 screws that hold this entire carburetor together? Well, I guess we're going to find out. Pop the pin out of the accelerator pump. Ooh, goodbye. Try to take the pin off of this, doesn't work. The only way to get this apart apparently is take this whole assembly off. Now the question still remains. I really think, folks, there's only 2 screws that hold this carburetor together. 2 right in the top. We're going to set this on something to keep it level. Well, I figured it out. I got to take all of the screws out. Hope these gaskets come apart and cooperate. That would be nice. So, we'll keep taking these out and see what happens. A little bit of persuading. I guess I should take the other metering rod out. I really don't want to break it. These carburetors have metering rods like an Edelbrock. So you can make a jet change pretty quick. The only problem is, I don't know if you can get this out. See, they don't tell you that in the manual. I need both hands a second. I need both hands to take one of these out. Because you gotta watch, because they will fly. Now, work this back down, I think, maybe. Just enough to get this rod off. Now this one will come out. This is your cruise and power circuit. See how the metering rod, 2 different spots? When you're cruising, the small part, and we can see it, is in the jet. Then the next part is for your power. Okay, now let's see if this top will come off. Well, that was pretty easy. There's some yucky stuff in there. Not a lot, but there is some in there. I want to see if I can raise these. See, these floats are not the same either. Look at that one, and look at that one. So I have to adjust these floats, which I think it's just bend the tab. I'm not sure what the setting is for these floats. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a tape measure and measure from here to the base on both of them. The one on the other side is lower, so that's the one I'm going to go by. And I'm going to take this apart, which I believe this little rod should come out. Pliers. Grab a hold of this little bugger right here. Oh, try to. Come on now. Here we go. Stay. This float, for some reason, that bend right there, you see that? It's not the same as the other one. So I'm going to try to straighten that real gentle. And other thing is, when you take these apart, shake them. Make sure there's no gasoline in them. I'm looking at this accelerator pump. Like I said, I'm winging it here, folks, totally. But there's the hole the fuel runs in. And I'm looking at the float level, and I don't think that's enough to make that happen. That's why the accelerator pump works, but it don't work. So I'm going to take a stab in the dark, and I'm going to tweak that float a little bit and try to get the fuel level a little bit higher and see what happens. The back end is in there. Check it out. Even at the back, a little bit of space in the front. Almost even at the back, a little bit of space in the front, but I think that'll do fine. Now we're gonna, oh, and this is another thing with these. If you have to change main jets, you have to take it apart. These are the main jets. And then these here, no, my mistake. These are secondary jets. That's where the fuel comes down these tubes. These here are the primary jets that those needles go down inside. So, I mean, I'm not very pleased with this carburetor. I'll be right honest with you. Because I think these are very, very cheap floats. I don't like this accelerator pump hose deal. I think this is a very cheap carburetor, but it was a long shot. So let me get this thing back together. Before we put this back on, we're going to do the usual. Make sure no dirt there. No dirt. A little bit of WD around the whole thing. Just a spotty because the rag will pick it up. And then once I get this back together, I need to figure out what's going on with this float. Or not float, choke. The choke. By doing this, like I said, we got to take it apart again. It'll come apart. So let me get the screws back in this, get this back together, and then we're going to tackle this choke issue. I'm going to actually try to hook power to it to see if I can get it to work right. So now we put these screws back in, every one of them. A little WD on them. I don't want to shoot my phone. Just a little on the threads to lube them up good. That way you don't gall in the aluminum, because this carburetor is entirely aluminum. The whole thing, and we don't want any galling or anything like that. I'm going to just start these 2 screws so I know it's lined up, and then we'll get the rest of them in. Like I said, folks, this flow sight and everything, I don't have any info on this carburetor. We are literally winging this like there's no tomorrow. But I've been around carburetors all my life. So, and I really think that's why the accelerator pump wasn't acting the way it was supposed to. Because that big hole that I showed you in the front, the fuel has to run in that hole. And if the float levels aren't high enough to let the fuel come up high enough, it's not going to happen. So I'm going to flip this over and get these other screws back in. You put these screws back in. You don't even, like I said, you're steel on aluminum here. I lubed them a little bit. I'm just have my hand on the tip of the screwdriver like this, just turning them in, and then I'll snug them, which is all you need. Don't get on there. I'll snug them. Like so. Then all I have to do is figure out the choke issue. I mean, I gotta admit, I'm not too impressed with this carburetor. I really am not. Sorry, Holly. Alright, I'm gonna snug this back up, get these little rods back on, and we'll tackle a choke. Now we're gonna take this choke apart, because this is really limp. I have this choke advanced all the way in a notch, and it shouldn't have to be there. It should be about here. And there's no tension there, so I'm going to take this housing off quick. Even advancing the choke all the way, it doesn't go shut completely. And for some reason, I think that little piston's hanging up a little bit. The way this works is this coil starts to get hot, and when it gets hot, it turns that little thingy and it moves this, which is the way it's supposed to work. But for some reason, when it gets to this spot right here, it's not closing all the way. And I'm thinking that maybe this rod, I think somebody tried to change one of these and this rod was in the way, so they bent it more. So I'm going to straighten this out, and hopefully that's our issue, because it doesn't go shut the way it should. All I'm going to do is try to crimp this like this and see if that's enough to straighten the rod out just a little, and hopefully I'm right. There, that straightened her out some. Now let's see what it does. It's against the back, and it's not hitting that funky spot anymore. So I'm going to try it there and see how that works. Put it back together, and I don't know how I'm going to suck the oil out of it. So I'm going to put this choke on, get it back on the truck, and then we'll bring you back in when we get her fired up, and it'll probably be tomorrow. Thanks for watching Wrenching Rick's Garage. These were some issues I had to sort out. I never expected a PCV valve to dump a half quart of oil in the intake of the engine. Still don't know how I'm going to get that out, but they make turkey basters, I guess. We'll get this back together, get this on, and then probably Saturday night, maybe Sunday, we'll take it out and test on it. Thanks for watching. Hit that like button down below. It helps me out a lot. Have a good night.